Hello friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my July wrap up. I read maybe not as much as I usually would this month, but I had a very successful reading month. I enjoyed almost everything I read. Let's get into it. So the first book I read this month was Animal by Lisa Taddeo. This follows a woman who ends up in a situation where she is out to lunch with one of her boyfriends, and one of her other boyfriends sees or finds out, comes to the restaurant, shoots himself in front of her, and she decides she's getting the hell out of New York. She's going on a journey to find this mysterious woman named Alice, I believe, and we get some crazy shit happening. Like, our main character Joan's backstory, crazy, and how she came to be in like multiple relationships. It was a lot, but it was a really interesting book. It was very dark, it was very gritty. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but I enjoyed it, so happy with that. Then I read The 7-Year Slip by Miss Ashley Poston. So this was my second Ashley Poston book. I'd read The Dead Romantics last month, I believe, and this was absolutely adorable. So this book follows a woman named Clementine whose aunt, who she loved dearly, has passed, and she's moving into her aunt's apartment to live. Everything seems fine, except her aunt has warned her in the past that sometimes this apartment moves through time. Sometimes it'll be present day, sometimes for no apparent reason the apartment will kind of slip into the past by 7 years. So one day Clementine's come home from work and there is a man in her apartment named Iwan, I don't remember, I think it's Iwan, and she's obviously initially scared, then realizes that he's not actually intruding. She kind of is, because she's come into his time in his apartment, and they obviously start a relationship and form this beautiful bond, and then things happen in present day, and it was heartbreaking. And just, I think what I'm going to expect is classic Ashley Poston, where you know, like right at the start of this book, basically where it's going to go, but getting there is just like heart-wrenching and really difficult to read, and I loved it. So highly would recommend this one as well. So guys, the next book I picked up was not a success, was not a vibe. Now every year I tell myself I'm going to be a little bit stricter when it comes to DNFing books, because I have got so many books to read and I don't want to waste my time on books that are probably going to get a 2.5 or 3-star rating by the end. So I started Normal Women by Ainsley Hogarth. Now, she is the same author as Mother Thing. Mother Thing was a book where it was fine, like I didn't dislike it, but by the end I thought, am I really ever going to think about this book or reread it again? The answer was no, so I actually ended up unhauling it. I got, I don't know, 50 pages into this book, and I didn't really know what the book was about. Like, we're following a woman, a new mother, and she's struggling with her husband, like lovely, and she finds this school, and presumably what she thinks most of the time to so then that's where and letting them. I just didn't turn to there was no like hook that made me want to keep reading this book, so I was like, fuck this shit. I DNF'd it and I'm going to unhaul it. I just don't think Ainsley Hogarth is the author for me, and I also think that I might have exhausted like the weird girl books that I was trying to read. I think maybe I read too many of them too close together, and each time I read another book that's like a weird girl book, they're slowly starting to lose the nuance and the little intricacies that made me love them initially. I'm just kind of not really into anymore. Next though, I read Listen for the Lie. Now, the way that I got this book was a whole ass rant in my June book haul. He does this and he goes, based on what I'm feeling, that feels like it's made of cardboard. Cardboard is a hardcover, it's $4. So we're not going to get into that here, but let me just say that it was worth it, because this book was so much fun. We follow our main character, Lucy. Lucy allegedly murdered her best friend. She doesn't remember any of the events of the night in question. She doesn't remember anything, but most of the evidence leads to her being the murderer, but she doesn't remember. There was no witnesses to the event itself. There was no like solid DNA evidence, and obviously because Lucy doesn't remember, she didn't give a confession, so the police actually had nothing solid to arrest her with. But years later, a true crime podcaster who likes solving cases comes to town, starts to rehash everything, re-interviews all witnesses and all sorts of people around the town, interviews Lucy herself, and we by the end figure out what actually happened the night of the murder. I really love this book. It was very fun. This is like what I think people call like a book written in crack format. Chapters were super short. We had podcast elements and interviews throughout, and I just loved Lucy's personality was me. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. Was the twist at the end and like was the reveal crazy out there? No, but I still enjoyed it. I think it was a really fun ride, so I gave it 5 stars. Guys, so next I read a book I have had on my TBR for so long. I mean years at this point, and I think I got the audiobook at my library. It finally came through and I decided this is the time. Today's the day we're doing this. It is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Can I just say 5 stars before we even start discussing this book? 5 stars. I love this book. This book is what I would call The Secret History adjacent, but maybe for like a slightly younger, slightly different audience. I love The Secret History, right? Pretentious college students obsessed with like Greece and Greek mythology and the Greek language, and they're basically all really terrible people. This is the same, except it feels like it's maybe written for a slightly younger audience, and instead of being obsessed with Greek, these guys are obsessed with Shakespeare. They'll have conversations between themselves and just like randomly start quoting Shakespeare. So sometimes I didn't understand exactly what was being said because I am not a fan of the Bard personally. Like, I've only read 1 or 2 of his plays, but I really love this book. Like, I really enjoyed this book. I actually owned an annotated copy. So this is an annotated copy. So most of these annotations came with the book when I received it, but I was annotating left, right, and center, and I was highlighting, and I was writing things in the margins, and I just really enjoyed it. I will just say, once again, none of these characters are necessarily good people, similar to The Secret History, which I just think these books, it is impossible to tie them together in my head. I actually meant untie. They just follow, for the most part, unlikable characters who have a very morally grey stance on life. But it's fun. It's dramatic. And like, I think in both the books, you start in the first chapter knowing what has occurred in present day, and then you go back to where it all started. And I just thought this book was so fun. It is definitely one of my new favorites. So that's a ringing endorsement. Next, I picked up a book that I purchased as a special edition because I recognized the author's name, and I thought I may as well get the special edition while I can because it was a pre-order and I didn't want to not purchase it and then try and purchase it months later for double the price from resellers. So I thought I'm just going to try get it while I can. I did. But then I thought to myself, do I really need to own a special edition of a book that I haven't read yet? Like, this could potentially be the worst book I've ever read, and I'm going to keep it on my shelf just because it's pretty. Like, that's not who I am. I love, like, don't get me wrong, I love special editions of books. You can see, like, a couple over here. Love special editions of books, but only if they're books that I love and books that I enjoy. And I didn't know that about this one. So I decided to read That Sick Love by Jessie Hall. So this is the Bookish and Spice edition. So yeah, I knew going in that this was a dark romance. I didn't know what it was really about. So in this book we follow Bryony. Bryony is like a really good religious girl. She's been raised within a pretty intense church community. She's gone through all her commandments and she does all things that she's supposed to do. She is abstinent. She is just the perfect Catholic girl. I think she's 19 or 20, but you know, she's like the perfect typical Catholic girl. Then we have Ero. Ero is her stalker, and he is very anti-religion, anti-organized religion, and he for some reason has decided that he's going to break her out of this religious community, and he's not going to be nice about it. So this is a dark romance. Obviously, like I said, he starts being a stalker. Like, that's how they initially interact with each other. So for the first like 50 pages, I was not really vibing with it. I don't care one way or the other about religion. I'm not super passionate for or against it, but I was like, ugh, I don't really want to read about religion in a romance. Like, that's just not my vibe. I'm so glad I stuck it out. This book was crazy. This book was unhinged. I really enjoyed this book, so I will be keeping this special edition. Yeah, pretty dark, guys. Very, very smutty, as you would probably expect. I don't know what else to say about this book on this channel because I went into this blind. Maybe you should as well, or maybe you should check your trigger warnings. I don't know, but I enjoyed it, so it's going to stay on my shelves a little bit longer. Okay, so the next book I picked up was actually for a book club. So I'm probably going to film a video I don't know, today, tomorrow, sometime soon, I'm going to film a video that's kind of a bit of an update on my personal life, like what changes have happened to me personally and within like my family, my friends, and my social circles at some point. Not even because I expect anyone to watch it, but just for myself, to have a little record of what things have transpired this year. But for this little section, all you need to know is that I don't really have a lot of friends right now. I don't know why that happened. To be honest, I don't understand it at all. Long story short, I'm in a situation now where I don't have anyone to talk to about books that I'm currently reading, books that I want to read at the same time as people. Like, I just don't have that connection anymore. So I decided to be a big girl and I joined a book club. Now, this book club was just formulated. I actually saw the person organizing it on TikTok, where she was just putting out feelers like, who would be interested in joining a Melbourne book club? Me. The answer is me. So the book that we read this month is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, which I have owned since it came out. I'm so glad that Becca gave me a reason to actually read this book. This book follows two writers. They find out where this like retired recluse heiress is living, and they both approach her and say, we would like to write your memoir. And she says, okay, well, I don't know which one of you is going to be a better writer, who I'm going to work with better, so I'm going to give you both a month to interview me and then give me your proposal of what the book is going to be like, and I will pick one of you to write my memoir. So these two are basically competing for a chance to write this book. But obviously, they're living in the same small town for this entire month. They get to know each other, so they've got their own kind of thing happening, but professionally they are competing against each other. I actually enjoyed this book. I know the romance was very quick and other people did not care about Margaret's chapters and all that, and the kind of overall vibe at our book club meeting on Wednesday night was that most people did not like this book. I might be one of the outliers. Me and one other girl both seemed to enjoy it because we just kind of read it, accepted it. Oh, they fell in love quickly, whatever. Oh, Margaret's a bit of a shady character. That's fine. We just enjoyed the ride. A lot of other people did not enjoy this book. I did give it, I think on Goodreads, a 5-star. It's more of a 4.5. I just think Emily Henry's writing is just, I don't think I could dislike an Emily Henry book at this point in time. So I will not recommend this to people that read romance, because it isn't just romance. There's a lot more going into this story, especially like familial ties, but I did enjoy it. So if my opinion means anything to you, yeah, give it a shot. Next, I decided to read a book I have owned for years. So I remember seeing this at a secondhand store right after a particular Shane Dawson video came out, and I thought, this is kismet. I purchased the book, and then it sat there on my shelves for years after the fact, and it is A Sucky Love Story by Brittany Louise Taylor. Now, as a YouTube watcher, I never actually watched Brittany Louise Taylor, but when Shane did a video about her in this like toxic, abusive, scammy relationship, I was very interested in her story. So like I said, picked it up years ago, only just decided to read it. This book was wild. I'm a true crime girly, and usually that involves murder cases and kidnappings, right? But I'm a true girly in every sense of the word. So I love hearing scam stories like the Tinder Swindler, one of my favorite true crime cases because it's just so unhinged. There was one recently, was it Con Mom? I think it was called Con Mom. That story was crazy. So this is that same sort of thing. Basically, Brittany Louise Taylor, she was a YouTuber. She was popping off in the day, millions of subscribers. She met this Serbian man named Miloš on Tinder, and their relationship moved very, very quickly. Like within a year, she was pregnant, they were engaged, they moved into a new house. Like their relationship moved very quickly. And it wasn't until after their son was born that she started to really piece together a lot of discrepancies, a lot of lies, and kind of put the pieces together that she had no idea who she was sharing a bed with. This story is just, it was intense. It was actually a pretty intense read, especially because after I finished this, I went back to the Shane video and my heart broke for her. So if you're at all interested in like scam relationships, like scammy romances, I'd recommend this. If you were interested in Brittany Louise Taylor at all as a creator, give it a go. I will be keeping this book. The next book I was a little bit scared to start. So the book is Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. I was a little bit scared to read this book because I was also really excited to read Hyde. Ding. And Hyde was such a big disappointment. As soon as I finished it, I unhauled it, and I was worried this was going to fall into the same trap of being a really interesting concept with terrible execution. However, this was delightful. This book follows a kids TV show from the 90s. We're mainly focused on the cast of the last time the show was aired, and it followed these 6 kids just playing and being creative, and there was no real structure to the show. You were just watching this group of friends be kids, and suddenly show gets taken off air. There is no recorded footage of the show. There is very little information about who the kids in the show were. Very, very sus. Then the book actually starts. So we kind of know all this based on the blurb. The book starts by following, what is her name? Val. And Val is living her life. Tragedy happens. Her father passes away very suddenly, and basically a bunch of strangers comes up to her and says, I cannot believe we found you after all these years. She has no idea who they are. And they're like, Val, it's us. We were all on that kids show together for ages. Like, we grew up together. She doesn't remember them at all. And from there, this group of friends reunites and kind of reminds Val of their childhoods and all the crazy things that happened. And this book was very reminiscent of Candle Cove and 1999. So I love both those creepypastas, which meant that I loved this. I just thought it was done really well. It was very creepy. I just liked it. I liked it a lot. It's not a new favorite, but as far as a creepypasta-esque horror book, I think this really hit it out of the park, so I'm keeping it. Next, I'm going to introduce a whole ass series to you and then kind of sort of go through the books one by one. So the series is called the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage. This is a cowboy series. It is set on a ranch. Like, what more do you need to know? And this book follows predominantly a family called the Riders. So there are 3 siblings within the Rider family, and then there are lots of like extended members of the family, very chosen family vibes. So there are 4 books in the series. I bought all 4 books before I even read the first one because that's just who I am as a person. Unhinged and very, very financially irresponsible.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
So I thought, there is no time like the present. Let's read at least the first book. Figure out if I actually like the author or the series before I continue with it. And if I don't, I can just save myself some time and DNF them all. So let's get into the books. First, I have got Done and Dusted. So the first book follows Emmy. So she is the sister of the Rider siblings, the only girl, and Brooks. So Brooks is actually her 2 older brother's best friend. She's never gotten along with Brooks. Brooks never really got along with her. They kind of just like bickered the entire time they've known each other. But Brooks has a really difficult family life. So Emmy's dad kind of welcomed him into the family as like an unofficial member of their family. But yeah, he becomes a member of the family. He's welcomed into their family because he doesn't really have one of his own. So this is a brother's best friend and best friend's younger sister romance. I enjoyed it, but it was a very short book. This is the shortest book of the series, but it was very, very quick. I don't feel like I had time personally to kind of really invest in these characters. So I think I gave this a 3-star. Like, it wasn't just average. It was better than average, but it wasn't exciting. It wasn't new. It was just a pretty typical romance. So I finished that, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue the series because it was a 3-star. If it was a 4-star or a 5-star, I would have been like, let's finish the series. But because it was a 3-star, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I thought, fuck it. So then I decided, let's just read the next book, which is called Swift and Saddled. This follows, I think he's the middle sibling, Wes, and the woman he hires to interior design one of the houses on the property. And her first night in town, she makes out with this random cowboy at Brooks's bar and realizes this is a mistake, shouldn't be doing this. She gets the fuck out, and then she goes to work the next day, her first day at this new job, and realizes, oh, I just hooked up with my boss last night. That's really awkward. And this book I did like more because Ada has a bit of a troubling past as far as romances go and relationships, whereas Wes is just the most patient, soft, gentle of the Rider siblings, and I thought that this was a very well done romance. Again, I think I gave it a 3 or a 3.5 star. It was slightly better than the first book, but again, it was so short that it was missing a little bit of depth for me. After reading those 2 romances, which, like, let's just be real, they are quite fluffy, they are a bit smutty, but like, they're not emotionally damaging books, I decided that's enough with the romance for now. Let's get into something a little bit grittier. And I decided to read Notes on an Execution. Now, this book was interesting. We follow a man named Ansel, and he is on death row, and we start the book when I think there's 18 hours until he's executed. And from there we go back into the past and we follow Ansel's mother's POV, starting from before he was born. We follow a detective's POV, and she actually knew Ansel when she was a kid. They were both at a foster care home together. And then we follow the sister of one of Ansel's victims. So he is on death row for murder, multiple murders. And this book, it didn't have any moments that was like especially shocking or twisty. It was kind of just like watching this author weave together Ansel's life and how he got to this point where he is on death row being executed. And it was very interesting. It was a little bit emotionally taxing. Like, I will say, this isn't the kind of book you can just read in one sitting. I did have to kind of space it out a little bit to get through it, but I think it is a very, very well done book. And this is one of those books, very similar to In Cold Blood, for me at least, where it does make me think about capital punishment as a concept. And yeah, it's a very interesting book. It was a very, what would you call it, like introspective book. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think I'd recommend it as well. So after that, which was, like I said, very emotionally taxing, I was like, I can't deal with the serious shit anymore. Let's go back to Rebel Blue. So I read the third book in the series, which was called Lost and Lassoed. This follows the older sibling Gus and Teddy, which is Emmy's best friend from the first book. Now, these two always hated each other, don't like each other, don't trust each other. But then Gus, who is a father, but separated father, but not a single parent, because he does work quite well with his co-parent Cam. That's a whole other thing we'll get into shortly. But Cam goes away and he does become a single father for the duration of a summer, and he is struggling. He needs help, so he reluctantly hires Teddy to be his live-in nanny for 3 days a week. And because they are forced together for this child, forced proximity does things to people, man. They open up, they start being vulnerable, and this was my favorite book in the series. I loved these two. I loved their dynamic. I loved Teddy, and I loved seeing Gus go from like grumpy old man to like softer, and his grumpiness was less about anger and hatred and became more of like protective and sweet. I love this book. So this was my top book of the series, but obviously I couldn't stop there. I had to finish the series. I had to keep going. So I did also read the last book, Wild and Wrangled. Like I said, this follows Gus's daughter's mom, Cam. Now, they have a really good friendship. They are great co-parents, but obviously they're not together because Gus is with Teddy and Cam is engaged during the 3 other books. In this book, however, not going to say what happens, but she's no longer engaged, and she decides, well, she doesn't decide, she kind of accidentally falls back into a friendship with her high school sweetheart, Dusty. And again, I really enjoyed this book. It just wasn't as good as Teddy and Gus, but this was a really, really fun book. It was a second chance romance, a friends to lovers to enemies to friends to lovers. It was very cute, but not my favorite. So if I had to rank the books, I think Lost and Lassoed is obviously in my first place, then maybe Swift and Saddled, then Wild and Wrangled, and I think Done and Dusted, the first book, is in last place just because it was so short, but I still really enjoyed it, and I will be keeping the series. I don't know where. I don't have any room on my shelves, so I don't know where it's going to stay, but it's going to find its home on my shelves somewhere. Somehow, some way, I will find a place for it on my shelves. And the last book I read this month, I finished last night, and it is The Disaster Artist by Greg Sestero. I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, so you're just going to have to stick with me on that. I've read this book before. Now, I only reread this book because I'm going to see Greg himself in person on Sunday night with my bestie Bob. So I thought, if I get a chance to like actually talk to him, because I think it's a Q&A situation before the room actually screens, so not sure. But if I actually get a chance to talk to him, I want to have this book fresh in my mind. So I did a reread, and this book is just iconic. Like, if you have ever heard of the movie The Room, or you've seen The Disaster Artist, which is like a Dave and James Franco movie, you gotta read the book. It's so good. The Room is basically renowned as one of the worst and best movies in history. It is comically bad. Like it is a disaster. It is actually a disaster movie, and it's just so funny. Basically, Greg was one of the main characters in The Room and the best friend of Tommy Wiseau, the director. And after the fact, Greg has just put together a book of like his friendship with Tommy, all of its ups and downs, the filming and production of The Room itself, and it's just a really funny, for the most part, it's a very funny book. There are quite a few moments where you think, holy shit, like Tommy Wiseau is just like this enigma of a man, and he is crazy and he doesn't make any sense and he's very emotional, but then you have these moments of him just being so broken that it breaks your heart. But either way, I really love this book. If I could get Greg to sign this book for me, it would make my life complete. It actually wouldn't. There are a lot of other things I want to do in my life, but getting Greg's signature certainly wouldn't hurt. Anyway guys, that is the end of my July wrap-up. So how many books did I read? So I read 14 books this month, so I'm pretty happy with that actually. 14 is a lot higher than I thought, so I'm happy with that. I probably will be reading less now because I have a job. I got a new job this month, so my reading is probably not going to be quite as speedy, but yeah, I don't have a like set TBR for August. I'm gonna be real here, guys. I'm gonna be real. I kind of am just in the mood for a Why Choose Romance. So I think I'm gonna start a Why Choose Romance today, and it is Friday, so I have the rest of tonight and then all of Saturday and half of Sunday to read whatever the fuck I want, and then back to work on Monday. But either way, thank you for watching this video if you watched it, and no one ever watches my videos, so if you made it to the end, you might be the only person on this planet. 1 out of 8 billion. You are special. You are more special than 1 in a million. You are 1 in 8 billion. Yeah. Either way guys, I will either see you in my next video, which is probably going to be my July book haul, or whatever video I decide to view next. Bye!